Well, welcome everybody to the very first episode of Turning the Table. Today's episode is called Retention is the New Cool. And currently we are waiting for my guest host or co-host, Jim Taylor. He's actually in a car racing back through the traffic in British Columbia. Him and his wife had a baby checkup this morning, so we're hoping that everything is perfect. And we'll bring him on in a second as soon as he joins this stream. So we decided to try this hashtag lunchbox live stream as a service to the industry that we all love, the hospitality industry, and intended it to be something that would be short, sweet, quick punch in your mouth, give you some stuff to go home or go back to the shop with, and work at some staff-centric solutions for some of the operational challenges that the industry is facing today. Or as my friend Chris Hall from the Burn Chef Project likes to call it, this profession. He refuses to call it an industry anymore because the industry connotates this kind of huge monolith that sits on our shoulders and squashes us down. And I completely agree that we are all able to chart our path through this wonderful career field if only we are focused on the values that matter to us. And look for an organization whose values match that. So why we decided to do this was because we love the industry. You know, Jim's been posting a series of really engaging posts on LinkedIn around this discovery he made a couple years ago, like, oh, geez, now I'm a consultant. Like after 20, 25 years in the industry and building up this huge amount of experience and now all of a sudden, because of COVID and some other circumstances, he's kind of outside looking in. And he makes a relevant point is that none of us actually start out to be a consultant. So speaking for myself, I was 35 years in the industry as an executive chef, corporate chef. Got in the business when I was 15 years old as a dishwasher. I went to work at the restaurant that my father liked to go to, the neighborhood Big Wheel restaurant in Hammond, Indiana. What's up, buddy?
Hey.
Yeah, just got going, and the entire internet dumped on me. I was
Oh no.
like, so here we are. We're live.
All right.
So I just was talking to everybody about why we decided to do this.
Yeah. Well, we decided that it'd just be good to have some good, healthy discussion about what's going on in the industry, right? I mean,
Right.
labor shortages, retention, inflation, all these different things. The game's just changed a little bit, right? So it'd be good to have some discussion and see what kind of problems we can solve.
Yeah. We were getting into some spirited. Hold on, I was just letting everybody know that we're just reconnecting. There we go. We're live on LinkedIn. Um, I guess the why for us is that we both come from an industry that we both still love. I was
Absolutely.
talking about the posts that you were doing about, you know, like who the hell ever plans on becoming a consultant? Like, ooh, geez, that's what I really want to do. And my reply to you is like, that's almost like that's like asking to be like ridden hard and put up wet by the folks who are still in the industry, like who all of a sudden, because we're not, on the line with them or running the floor with them, all of a sudden we become
Mhm.
like superfluous. Like we don't necessarily have um, a big volume of knowledge and experience with which to be able to assist.
Yeah.
And so sometimes it's like being a glutton for punishment has been my experience. But you've had a little bit of a different experience, I think,
Yeah. Well,
haven't you?
and to your comment about the becoming a consultant by accident, it's funny because I'm sure a lot of people who are in operations in restaurants, front of house or back of house, in a lot of ways can relate to the experience. I got into restaurant management by accident too.
Did you really?
Well, it's kind of that surprise you're the manager type thing, right? I mean, you don't do anything stupid. You have good relationships with people. You give good service, and someone just says, "Hey, do you mind locking up tonight?" And all of a sudden, you're the manager,
Right.
right? It
Right.
kind of happened the same way.
Or the sous chef or the executive chef happens to bail out on a weekend saying, "Hey, I got another job. Say thanks very much." And all of a
Yeah.
sudden they're looking at me going, "Okay, do you know how to close?" And I'm like,
Right.
I'll figure it out, man, I think."
Hmm.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, in terms of my experience in over the last few years trying to support the industry is we've been really lucky that, we, because we take such a specific approach and, I've talked lots about this, kind of holistic data driven decision making process. I mean, it's really, I think we're actually making some really good strides in helping the industry understand how to navigate all this craziness that's going on. Right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I've been famous for saying, I think COVID was a blessing for the industry because it showed so many opportunities. We can look at things and say, oh well, they're screwed up, they're fucked up. There's just things that are absolutely wrong and nothing's ever going to change. But for me, it's like, where's the gap?
Hmm.
Because if I can identify it as a gap, then I can close that gap. I have some ability to be able to do that, whether that means figuring it out myself, which is always takes much longer. Um, Granted, I get to carry that ability with me moving forward, but
Hmm.
I've gotten, as I've gotten a little bit older, I did a post yesterday where I said, maybe I'm just getting older, but, order is a hell of a lot more sexier than chaos. Whereas I know for a fact that at a point in my career, chaos was definitely where it was at.
Oh yeah.
But as I've gotten a little bit older, or what I'd say is more mature, I appreciate being able to be with other people who I can gain knowledge from. In the personal development space, they say very often that you're the result of the five people who you are most closely aligned with,
Yeah.
because it's just almost impossible not to glean stuff from them and want to be like them. I think that's one of the things that I've really enjoyed about our collaboration is that not only did you reconnect me with something that I played around with, not really knowing what I was doing much earlier in my career,
Hmm.
but you brought about a wisdom and a way of actually bridging the gap in communication to potential clients that for me was kind of an eye opener, because I think I've spent most of my life, shaking a lot of trees and, hitting people over the head with wisdom. And, we know how far that goes. But your way of being with clients is something that's very admirable to me. You know, you ask a lot of questions. In a lot of ways, you're the perfect coach, right?
Oh,
Because
wow.
you ask a lot of questions and you don't necessarily throw your wisdom around or what you think they should be doing. What you're actually assisting them to do is to solve their own problems, like to become their own guru once they understand what it is that you're teaching.
Well, you and I, we as a group, but you and I mean, we've joked about this a few times, right? The consulting by opinion
Yeah.
trap that people get stuck in.
Yeah.
You know, and we, I mean, partly people on our team, but also, you know, I meet people all the time that are trying to help the industry. They're trying to do things that are beneficial, that are going to move the needle. They're going to help the industry recover and find this whole new normal thing, right? But there's so much of this. I have tons of experience, 10, 20, 30 years of experience, really knowledgeable, very smart, but the approach sometimes, or what the trap that I find they get stuck in. And I got stuck in this at the beginning of my consulting career. You know, we try to use that term loosely because our industry hates it. They just go, here's what I've done in the past, so here's what you should do. And you know, a lot of operators, I think, don't take well to that, because this is my baby, this is my business, this is what my dream, this is what I'm trying to build, and don't tell me how to do it. So, you know, we've been really lucky, I think, that just that approach around helping operators understand the information that's right in front of them and what it can help them do with their business is, you know, that's why it's more about asking those questions and really just helping guide them to the answer. So I think Chris, who we spent a lot of time with, actually was joking with me the other day about how one of the things that he I guess gets a kick out of when I've said it is that I don't even know the color of the walls of most of the restaurants that we work with.
Right.
Because, you know, we've never even stepped foot in them, and we don't need to, because it's all about information. It doesn't mean that we have to go there and run the place for them.
So we decided to call this first episode "Retention is the New Cool," and I know that that's a phrase that you didn't necessarily come up with, but was attached to you. Like, no, this is the way to do it from now on. And I know that a lot of operators struggle with. I think retention is one of the things that they least think about. They're most actively thinking about how to attract new talent, right? Because they think that who they have right now is comfortable and that they don't necessarily need to worry about them. And why do you think that retention is actually kind of the gateway to not only creating a culture that everybody wants to work in, but also becomes a point of attraction to, you know, people who are looking for a great job?
Well, to be honest, I don't remember the exact stat off the top of my head, but I've worked with lots of restaurants that turn over their entire staff every year, pre-COVID.
Right.
50% turnover, 75% turnover, you know, 80% turnover. Those numbers aren't unheard of. You know, even the company that I worked with when I was still in operations had very good culture, had really good retention. I was there for 20 years, right? They had a very good retention strategies, but we still turned over the hourly staff at like a 60% clip every year. So to me, it's, you know, if a restaurant needs to hire 10 people, you know, it's hard to find 10 people that want to come to work right now, right? That want to work in our industry. That it's hard to find people that want to work in restaurants. But that number might be less than 10 if they didn't lose 2 or 3 people every month. Right. And I think that the industry is changing in the way that people are looking at how to take care of their people, how to protect their people, how to make the experience better. You know, and there's a couple examples that I use a lot. And one of them is a company that added cleaning and laundry service. You know, you and I have talked about this one quite a few times. They added cleaning and laundry service at your house for every employee in the whole company, whether you're the first day dishwasher or you're the vice president of operations. I was talking to your friend Jensen Cummings the other day.
Well, I'd say he's our friend now, but
well, hopefully he's our friend now. But you introduced me to Jensen, and the example he gave me was a group that added pet insurance for every employee because they ran into a scenario where an employee didn't have insurance. They got sick. They didn't have pet insurance. Their dog got sick, and they had to pick one to spend their money on. And so they took their dog to the vet, and because of that, they missed 2 weeks of work. Yeah. So that hurt them, that hurt the business. And so that company has now decided to add pet insurance for every employee. I mean, that's game changer, right?
I couldn't agree more. Speaking from my own personal experience, my daughter had a cat who she was incredibly attached to, and the cat ran out in a thunderstorm and got injured, and it cost her $7,000 to get this cat put back together. And she was in a
Mhm.
relationship at the time, and they were headed right for the marriage. And he's like, "What are you doing?" And she's like, "I have to do this." And
Mhm.
so she actually not only picked her own health over that cat, but also her happiness, because in the end, he's like, "Well, if you're going to put that much importance on a cat and not on me," so it was kind of like a weird exchange, and in the end, it worked out for the best. But I think the sneaky thing is there's a hell of a lot more people who are having to make these critical decisions than we give them credit, or we give ourselves credit for actually understanding. And I know Jensen's been doing a great post around, just asking the question, "Hey, what benefits does your employer provide?" And
Yeah.
he's created this huge document. And I was just taking a look at it right before we got on, because there are some that are absolutely critical to the operation, and then there are
Mhm.
some that are just kind of nice to have.
Mhm.
Um, and the question is, I think a lot of people during this constriction of the labor pool started throwing dollars around and saying, "Oh, well, it's got to be the wage. It's got to be the wage. So let's pay more. Let's pay more. Let's pay more," and still forgot about mental health and physical health, well-being programs
Mhm.
and things of that sort. And we had a conversation earlier this week when I mentioned to you, like, the people in the United States do not understand what an emotional load it is to have to worry about healthcare
Mhm.
in the United States. And I happen to be married to a Canadian and spent time in Canada, and you're from that wonderful country where you don't ever
Yeah.
sweat that, because you're just going to go to the emergence, it's all going to be taken care of. And I
Yeah.
say to Americans, like at some point our industry has to stand for that and actually advocate for that, as opposed to some organizations or lobbyists constantly being in Congress saying, we got to keep the wage low, we got to keep the benefits low, or else it's going to be an industry killer. As far
Yeah.
as I know, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, Germany, a lot of these countries have vibrant restaurant scenes,
Mhm.
and nobody seems to be hurting.
Well, one of the interesting things about that whole conversation, and I actually got called a wage lobbyist at one point, because I was having lots of discussions with people about, you can pay more and still, run a
Mm-hmm.
very, very successful business, and happy
Mm-hmm.
to help people who might not believe that. But without getting fully into the conversation about wages
Mm-hmm.
and what they should or shouldn't be, I
Correct.
think the fun part of some of the work that we get to do with restaurant groups is helping them understand the both short and long-term benefits of just taking better care of their people,
Right.
whether that's a wage, whether that's a benefit, whether that's pet insurance, whether that's whatever that might be, right? And sometimes it's amazing that our industry is notorious for just kind of always doing things the same, right?
Mm.
It's just one of our sort of taglines that we talk about a lot is, try to get rid of this is the end of, we've always done it this way,
Right.
right? And I think, like you just said, there's a lot of that comes up. It's like, well, this person is going to quit and go work down the street. Well, let's just pay them $1 more an hour.
Right.
And that just doesn't work anymore, right? And that example around adding cleaning and laundry service for every employee, it was $30 a week per employee. That's less than $1 an hour for a full-time person, to have someone show up at their house and clean their house and do their laundry for them, so that would positively impact their work life balance and improve probably their experience at work. They're in a
Mm-hmm.
clean shirt every day instead of the dirty one. But yeah, it's retention is the new cool. Has it's kind of taken on a bit of a life of its own for us, but it's really about, we just got to find ways to just improve the overall employee experience, top to bottom, in
Mm.
this industry.
Right. Through the entire life cycle, I know that there are some organizations or some associates who say onboarding. What do you mean? I didn't have any onboarding. Like, no, like they pointed where the bathroom was and then gave me an apron and said, "Go to work."
Mm-hmm.
And that lack of inclusion in what that organization is all about. I mean, it took me a while to get to it, but a healthy half day workshop around, this is day 2 orientation and this is what we expect and these are our values and really goes a long way. So it
Oh
doesn't
yeah.
always have to be I mean, there's a cost to everything, but it's not as simple as throwing a wage around. And I tell you why. I happen to live in Asheville, North Carolina, which is considered one of the best, especially this year, one of the best restaurant towns in the nation. There's 4 James Beard Award winners. One of the restaurants was named best restaurant in the country. And cooks and dishwashers and servers consistently jump ship for 25 cents. It's like that's how competitive it's because the living wage to live and work in Asheville is somewhere around, and I'm don't quote me on this because you can actually go to MIT Living Wage Calculator, which is a real eye opener, and pick your city, your county, your town, and actually look at what your living wage actually calculates out to be. But it was somewhere around $27 an hour as a living wage to live and work in Asheville. That's why people jump for 25 cents because they can't afford to live here, so they're constantly forced out into the suburbs, which adds stress. They've done construction on every road leading into Asheville for the last year and a half, and it's going to continue for another year because now all of a sudden there are bedroom communities to Asheville, which is crazy. But it just seems to me that, like you said, there's got to be a better way to do this. There's got to. I firmly believe it. And I think that's why we're here. And one of the other reasons why we're actually doing this hashtag Lunchbox live stream is something that I got from Jensen when I was interviewing him for a podcast, when he said every hospitality company, every consultant, every restaurant, every hotel has to be both a hospitality company and a media company, because if you don't own the narrative, someone else is going to own the narrative for you. And so we are here to dispel this entire myth about consultants, coaches, whatever the hell you want to call it. What you need to know is we're actually here to serve you. Whether or not you choose to, that's completely up to you. We honor that. But one of Jim's core approaches, which I've taken on, which is, to me, it seems so counterintuitive, is like, I'm not going to tell you how to run your business. You know your business better than I. I'm just showing you what the data reveals so that you can understand almost immediately, once you see the interpretation of the data, what there is to do.
Yeah. There's been some really cool examples of that.
Please.
The one, well, the 2 that jump to my mind always are, one a group actually based in Kentucky, big restaurant group. And we were still in the process of they weren't even a customer or a client at this time. We weren't even officially working with them. But we were showing them an example of what some of this data that we look at and, some of our core measurements around how to measure productivity in a restaurant environment and how to measure employee workload. We were showing them what that looks like, strictly from a generic perspective. And one of the examples we were talking about was what customer spend does to profitability, and how often the management team actually has no control over what that impact might be. And anyway, the COO of the company, he actually asked me to hold on a second. He muted himself, and I'd see him grab his phone, and he makes a phone call, and he comes back off mute. And I said, what did you just do? And he said, I just phoned our marketing team and told them to cancel wing night because it's affecting our customer spend. And we were like, no, hold it. We're not even there yet. We're not at that point.
Right.
But, really quickly, things kind of can jump off the page.
But do you actually mean customer spend or customer behavior?
Yeah. Well, I say spend right now because I haven't introduced people to that terminology. We call it customer behavior because it's how do you
Right.
So there's been a couple of those examples, but there was a group in Canada here, a fairly large restaurant group that they realized they were going to save $1 million a year. And they came to that conclusion in the first 10 minutes of our first meeting with them. It was just, really exciting. We talk about building trust quickly with someone you're working with, right?
Sure. I mean, to understand that opportunity exists is one thing. And then there's like, the nose to the grindstone, actually, like what it looks like to proactively manage that every day. So, kudos to those operators who are actually like, not only do they get it, but they're actually willing to put in the work to actually realize that savings. And then,
for sure,
I think you've been kind of amazed at just how many operators actually see an opportunity like that and realize, no, I don't want to just, pay that out as dividends. I want to actually reinvest that back into my organization.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the fun part of a lot of the opportunity that we get with operators and owners of restaurants is that the ones that we end up working with are the ones that want to do new cool stuff. They want to change the way that this, it's not just pay $1 more. They want to pay for someone's car payment. They want to put someone through school. They want to pay somebody's mortgage payment. They want to pay for cleaning and laundry or pet insurance. They're really looking at ways to, reinvent how hospitality people are looked after. Yeah. Right. I think that and this is, kind of a lofty goal, but, you think back to a few years ago when, the whole Silicon Valley, Facebook, all that kind of stuff. It was like, you get to wear a hoodie to work and there's no dress code and come and go as you please. And, I think that the hospitality industry is the next industry that needs to embrace that type of stuff.
Whatever that looks like.
Whatever it looks like. And we don't have the answer to that yet, but, really going after it in a unique way.
Jim, how was the appointment this morning? Everything's good?
It's great. Yeah.
Yay! Well, listen, that's about as much time as we have for today. We'll be back next Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern time. And we have a few guests lined up, and I'm really excited about the next one, but she hasn't agreed to it yet, so we won't put that out there. But in the meantime, if you want to learn more, please reach out at benchmark60.com. My name is Adam Lamb.
Thanks for joining us.
And you want to introduce yourself, Jim?
Oh, yeah. Thanks for joining. We'll see you next week.
You bet. Thanks. We'll see you. Bye-bye. Oh, wait a second. I got to do the outro music. See, pretty good, right?
It's great. Yeah, those are going to be fun.
Bye.